Welcome to the Bonsai Time Podcast, the monthly Everything Bonsai and More podcast. In today's episode, we will hear a conversation that my co-host Kevin had with the Columbus Bonsai Society president, Mark Passerrello, who is also a local bonsai potter. He is the owner of Ancient Art Bonsai and frequently sells trees and pots at local art events. This conversation goes over many topics from his start in bonsai to how his time in theater and as a thespian influences his bonsai approach. They also covered ideas for pushing growth in the local bonsai scene, which includes outreach events, such as our upcoming 50th anniversary CBS Bonsai Show, which will take place this September 24th and 25th of this year, 2022, at the Dawes Arboretum in Ohio. Hope to see you all there, and bonsai on!
Alright, now we are officially recording.
Are we for sure recording?
Official recording. We're in the car on the road going back to Ohio, Columbus. And we're in the car with Mark Passerrello. If I said that correctly?
You did.
Awesome. Had some time in the car now talking about it. So for a side note for anybody listening, we went to Indiana today to Mark Field's place. Garden and Nurseries, Bonsai by Fields, and we did some a grafting workshop with grafting white pine on black pine stock and cork bark pine on red pine stock, and learning all the ins and outs of grafting in that way. It was a overall really good workshop.
I enjoyed it. Never done that kind of stuff before and liked it.
Yeah, I've dabbled a little bit, but never had a full-on focus, and it was affordable, nice workshop. But as I said, funny thing, I thought I'd hit record on the way up, and Mark, passenger here, and I were talking for about an hour and a half, and lo and behold, it was not recording, so it was a good primer for what this is now. So, Mark, what did you take away from the class? What were your biggest things that you took away from the class?
I took away, there's a couple of pots that I stuck in my pocket when Mark wasn't looking is what I took away from the class. No, in all seriousness, it was nice to be out in the fresh air, get out of town, take a little road trip, and get to spend some time with tree people.
Yep.
Always a good thing, and learning a new skill, which I've never done grafting before.
The nice thing with grafting, you can apply it to your landscape trees as well.
Well, it is a useful skill now that you know how to do it. The thing that was clarified a lot for me was I have avoided trying to do grafting because it seemed like it needed to be precise, surgical. Things needed to line up very carefully, and one of the things I took away today was that sometimes it's just sort of like what you call meatball surgery. It doesn't have to be very precise.
Oh, finesse picky though. Yeah. I would agree. It's very eye-opening to the regulatory aspects that I thought needed were as well. We're just kind of not thrown out the window, but given a levity about it, being like, just try it.
Yeah, and I think that's a little bit of it. As somebody who's done it a lot and has experience with it, is just being very casual. I think there's got to be a bit of care.
Yeah.
Put into it.
Yeah, the aftercare in the world. I know as we touched on the first solid try of podcasting with you.
Our dress rehearsal.
Yeah, dress rehearsal.
Our
Yep.
final dress.
Now is the final showing, one night only. You are a ceramicist. Would you consider yourself a ceramicist?
I don't know about.
Well, yeah.
I don't know. I'm iffy about terms. I'd say I've been messing with clay for about 3 years. So
or
I guess I'm
ceramic practitioner.
I'm a ceramic practitioner, ceramicist, potter. I don't know whatever those terms are. I've been messing with clay for about 3 years after having done the tree aspect of bonsai for close to 30.
With pottery, I don't. You may have touched on it or not, but what was the first pot that inspired you, or first thing that inspired you to want to get into clay? Was it just to make pots yourself so you could afford them, or
some of that? It just I certainly didn't approach it because I wanted to be in business.
Right.
It's just an expansion of the hobby. It is nice to make the pots that you put your trees in.
Right.
And to experiment and get your hands dirty. Clay has to be touched. If you're shopping for pots, there's something about holding the pot in your hand, and the wet clay before it's even formed and worked with is like that too. It's very satisfying to deal with, to put your hands on.
Touching the earth, if you will.
It is earthy, yes, absolutely.
What specifics as far as a clay body do you personally like to use, or in your own when you look for a pot, what do you look for in that way? Does that make sense?
I like a very solid stoneware clay. Stoneware is important just for bonsai usability. It's got to be able to stand being frozen,
right.
That kind of thing, being outside all year round. So stoneware, I like dark colors rather than white. I like something that has some texture to it. Clay people call that grog, when there's bits of stuff, bits of clay already in the wet clay, rather than something that's very smooth. So it has some texture, it has some weight, visual weight when you look at it. It can be rough like a brick, or if you work at it, it can be smooth.
So as you have been doing pottery for more than a few years now, has it given you more of an aspect of what you want to find in a pot yourself? Like, say you're going to purchase one, what is something that you would look for if you're purchasing a higher end pot as opposed to what you make?
Well, it made me much more aware of the technique and what goes into making a pot, the actual process, and how the technique, the craft of it, what separates a really good pot from just a pot. So I have not bought a lot of pots now since I've been making my own.
Nice.
It's most bonsai people I know have a big pile of pots, and since I'm making them, I have an even bigger pile. So it's hard to justify buying even more, but sometimes there are things you just can't walk past.
Right. Now, as I know we discussed this morning that you grew up in Pennsylvania and everything, had you ever had any, childhood pottery classes or anything? Or anything in that way?
No, I was artistic, enjoyed art classes in school, but
finger paints.
yeah, I was a real master of finger paint medium. I didn't do any ceramics. It's not, my mother at one point did the paint your own kind of thing when that first started a long time ago.
Right.
They'd go to a place and they'd make vases or little ceramic poodles or what have you. Knock off Hummel figurines. And I'm surprised at how good my mother is. Not an expressive woman, or very what I think of as creative, but she was really good at the painting. Really nice stuff, and I think it's because she was good at following instructions.
Oh, okay. Okay. So as you are a thespian, you consider yourself a thespian, yes?
A thespian, I do. Yes.
Honorary title. What got you into acting? What led you? Did you do any of that in younger years when you're growing up? Not really. Let's say that. Western PA is.
That's where
Western
I'm
PA,
from.
right?
Western PA, and it's not like I was 3 blocks off of Broadway.
Right.
But there was no community theater in my town. I went to a high school that actually didn't have any kind of theater going on. So the first time I was on stage was in a bicentennial pageant, and some of our listeners might not even be old enough to remember the bicentennial, 1976. But I was in a bicentennial pageant. That was all right, but I went to college initially to be involved in radio. I was going to be some kind of journalist on radio.
Oh, I can see that. You got the voice for it.
And you think so? Thanks. And and in the spring ended up auditioning for a play, getting cast in the play, and thinking, wow, this is really great. And that was kind of a surprise for some people that knew me, because I was a fairly shy, quiet, bookish kind of kid, and so to be able to be on stage, be in front of people, to do those things, surprise some people. But you'd be amazed at how many actors actually are fairly shy, quiet, reserved people who are able to come out of their shell and explode a little bit when they're on stage.
Do you think that's because they're personifying someone else? And it's
Oh,
not
sure,
themselves?
absolutely. It's if you're shy because you're afraid that somebody will laugh at you, or you don't think what you have to say is important. Yes, being someone else on stage. If you're shy, how many people get in a group and say, I didn't say anything because I didn't know what to say. Well,
Right.
it's easy to know what to say on stage because somebody else has figured it out for you ahead of time.
As opposed to a bonsai group where it's like too many people saying one different thing about one tree.
Well, that's, yeah, well,
But that's the fun of it too, different perspectives for everybody. So, say, as you said, with the thing of taking on this role of personifying somebody else and taking on this whole different life in acting, has that in turn given you a different reference for how you do pottery?
I don't think that doing pottery is necessarily helped or hindered by acting in general, but being an actor involved in the arts, having an appreciation for the arts,
Yeah.
knowing a little bit of history, it gives you some background.
Right.
You understand a little bit more, I think.
Yeah, because this was like, well, I guess I'll ask that a different way. So you know how people have different aesthetics to throw a pot or to make a pot? They
Right,
have their
right.
trademark. It's almost like personifying themselves in a different way because it's their pot speaking for them,
Mhm.
right? So would you say that your pots directly or indirectly speak about who you are without saying anything?
Absolutely. I think any artist's work says something about them.
Right.
Or their experience goes into it.
Do you, if you could pinpoint or describe, how would you say that you found your voice through your pottery?
I'm still
Or are you still working on it?
I'm still working on that, and I wonder if I have found a voice, or is there a voice to find? And that might be a little dose of imposter syndrome, because I like when I see pots that have a rough textured clay and have rough texture. They're very rustic, erratic, when they really clearly show the wabi-sabi aspect of Japanese culture.
Right.
I like that, and that's kind of what I do. But then in the back of my head, I'll make a pot, and kind of my thought was that everything I do is going to be one-off. They're always going to be one of a kind. I won't use patterns or measure or that. It will all be
Right.
a fluid process, creative process right then.
Very organic.
Yes. And so what that leads to, things I do aren't perfect circles, definitely are not perfect rectangles or squares.
Right.
And so in one sense it's very pleasing, but also there's a voice in the back of my head that says, you're doing that because you can't do a perfect square.
So it's always the inner critic.
So
that's the worst
yes.
critic.
Am I using it's wabi-sabi as an excuse? Because I would like to be able to make the very smooth, the very even, the very regular forms. And I don't know if that's just not within my artistic expression, or it's just I have to further my technique more and refine my method. Obviously, if you measure a little bit, if you make patterns and templates,
Right.
that evenness and regularity is easier to achieve.
Right. Well, I think too, as in American bonsai, whatever you want to call it, American tree work. I don't know, bonsai being a Japanese word, tree in a pot. There's always this need for more pottery, more ceramics, and everybody. I won't say everyone, but a lot of people are just wanting to be artists in the realm of styling a tree. What led you to want to do besides, already saying, I wanted to afford my own pots, it's expensive to buy good pottery. Was there anything other than like seeing a void that needed to be filled and you were going about it to do it yourself, or just more of a thing for your own self?
I definitely, it's something I wanted to try and do. I wanted to experience. Rather than, I didn't think that I'm the great savior that's going to, change the bonsai landscape. I just wanted to fool around with the clay. I enjoyed doing it, and I think I would keep doing it even if I wasn't trying to produce things nice enough to sell or give away. And if people, people like, I've gotten some good feedback from people about what I'm making, and that's very pleasing. But I'd keep doing it even if I was just doing it for myself.
Oh, nice. Well, do you have any brothers and sisters?
I have a younger sister.
Is she in the arts at all, or is she?
She is not.
Interesting. Okay. Is she into plants at all?
Nope. Not only what's in her salad bowl.
Okay. Well, healthy eating's healthy.
Well, no, I don't know. That's not eating.
Okay. Within your understanding in life and plants now, how has that changed how you see yourself? From where you were 30 years ago in college to when you found bonsai, and then how has that changed you? Has it gotten you into more things you wouldn't be into, or better people have been met? Or,
Well, definitely, some good bonsai friends that I've known for quite a while through the hobby. Bonsai is one of the longest constants in my life. Arriving to be 57, and I have some trees that are 30 years old, so that's a couple years longer than I've been married,
right?
And much older than the kids I have,
right?
And the longer term than I've ever had with one employer. So bonsai is a big part of my life. I've heard you use the phrase bonsai lifestyle, and it does get to be it's not just a hobby. It gets to be a big shaper of your life.
It's one of the last things you fall asleep thinking about, and one of the first things you think about waking up. Depending on the season.
Yeah. I don't know if I've gotten to that point, but it's I'm not that bad. But
take a couple more workshops and you'll be there.
When you daydream at work, it's like, I wonder what my trees are doing.
Right. Well, then that aspect too for me, it's like where I was working, in a field with certain things, and I found myself thinking about my trees more than I was wanting to be in my office.
Oh.
I was like, okay, I think I need to reevaluate my life here, figure out why is this a thing that's taking such a strong hold. Would you agree with that statement?
Oh yeah, well, bonsai it does take a strong hold, and if you're in a job that you don't really love, and be honest, how many people really find the job that they love?
Right. Even if later in life, yeah, that's an interesting concept for the fact of like what we're doing now in a pandemic. We're seeing so many people going back to nature, right? More people getting into bonsai or just in something houseplants or otherwise trying to become a green.
Yeah, I've seen some numbers, and I forget the exact numbers about how many people came to plants during pandemic.
Quarantine, yeah. I mean, I know my neighbors, and your neighbors probably do the same. Or do you neighbors? How is your yard laid out as far as your display in your house? Is it by your front yard?
I think putting your bonsai out in your front yard, or even really very visible, is probably not smart. It just attracts too much attention. It's a typical suburban layout, about a quarter acre of ground, house in the middle, front yard with the basic foundation plantings and stuff.
Right.
In the back, I was lucky to have a fenced yard already. I think a fenced yard is real nice.
Gives nice privacy along with not having trees stolen.
Well, right. And I do not have one of those magazine quality Japanese garden kind of layouts. It's more practical, not made for beauty. It's made for a place to keep the trees.
And relaxing when need be.
Well, yeah, I do spend a lot of time there in the backyard, and so it's nice for me, my little corner. But it's not a Japanese garden finished sort of layout. And maybe at some point it will get to that.
Yeah.
My wife has commented, especially about what the front yard looks like, that I spend so much time on some stuff outside, but you hardly pay attention to others. So that means that the grass gets mowed and the leaves get raked, and that's about it. So it's not. I'm not one of these. I like gardens, like plants, like all that, but there's only so much time and so much effort, so I don't have time to devote to topiary shrubs and a perennial border and all that.
Right. So within your time of living in your house, putting your bonsai as it is in location, do you think for your time growing within the Columbus seasonality, living with trees, bonsai specifically, how has that changed how you live or see the seasons in Columbus or just in your life?
Well, it makes you really aware of the seasons for sure. And in Columbus, we still do have 4 distinct seasons. I think that in the 30 years that I've been here, climate change and other factors have made the duration and extent of the seasons change a bit.
Right.
But we do have seasons, and there's variability where you can go from 0 in the winter, 0 Fahrenheit or lower, to above 100. So that's 0 to 100 Fahrenheit and Celsius.
Yeah.
So,
would you say you've gotten more appreciation for each season? As far as seeing your trees change, it brings you more of that peaceful feeling?
Easy peaceful. I have never liked winter and have grown to dislike winter more every winter I lived through. Now, liking crab apples and larches as much as I do, I probably will always have to live somewhere that has winter.
Right.
But I don't like winter at all. So if you're talking about what's the opposite of appreciation? Depreciation?
Very well. With your time in the club and, talking about seasonality or anything in that way of change, what have been the biggest factors of change in the club as of recent or in your whole time within the Columbus Bonsai Society or Bonsai Society Columbus?
When I first joined, bonsai is a white guy hobby.
In America, yeah.
And in our area, it seemed like it was older white guys,
retirees, if not.
Well, yeah, younger. Certainly. When you're 24, you think everybody's an old guy,
right.
But they were not real welcoming or willing to share, or they were questioning of new people. I hope that our club is continually getting away from that mindset, being more open, because I like to think of us as not just an educational organization, but a social too.
Socio-educational, all the above. I would agree. My time spent here, like I said before, I first came into living in Columbus from Portland, Oregon 3 years ago. My wife's doing her PhD at the Ohio State University. And, my first introduction was not open arms, but not closed fists, It was very much, the Midwest hello to an outsider. But again, that has changed too. I mean, you're now the president of the club. Like, what are some things you want to see initiated or put into effect that will forever go forward?
Well, I'm not looking to make any radical sweeping changes. I don't think that we need that,
or even little impacts.
I want to do as much outreach as we can.
Yeah.
Get out into the public, to events and different venues and places where art people or plant people are located, so we can make sure that they know where we're at.
Right.
But we have a good strong club. It's small, and I'd like to see the pool of active members get larger.
Right. Now, do you think, as maybe redundant to say, but do you think with the outreach and community organization becoming larger, that will achieve more club members who actually want to be working on trees, or more reflection of like, oh, I like this because it's nature, and I like nature? Do you think within that outreach that we can get, as you being president and wanting to push for that to go forward, will have a higher impact on club membership?
It might.
Or you hope so?
That is certainly what I hope, that we get more people in. I'd like to see people attending meetings more regularly.
Right.
It seems like that's a dividing line. Is that people with a casual interest will come for one or two and then drop away.
Yeah.
And so I think that there needs to be a friendliness about the meetings. There needs to be a social aspect, so people want to come. And then when they're there, there's something worth their time, whether that's a demonstration or a workshop or just some good conversation about trees and tree-adjacent topics.
I know some clubs around the country, especially like Bonsai Society in Portland being so large, with 500 members now, which is astonishing, and a great feat to achieve. Small little army, or not a small army anymore, a large city.
Yeah.
Town. What I've seen other clubs like Bonsai Society Portland and other clubs have done is like there's somebody new, and we know there's someone new that they know there is. They'll say, "Is anyone new here? If you are, please stand up, introduce yourself." And they'll directly say to the person, "Look behind you, look in front of you, look to your right, look to your left. All of you that you see here are here to help you and here to give you knowledge, and just ask any question and we'll find an answer for you." And I think that, from what I experienced with that, was like the biggest welcoming open arms I've ever had. Just because, like, it is the answer.
It is the answer.
And in regards to that representation of a really welcoming,
that reminds me of something that used to happen in this club a long time ago.
What was that?
And it was at the beginning of every meeting. Everybody would go around and introduce themselves.
It'll take like about 15 minutes to say
maybe not even that, but it just, people would say, "Hello, my name is." And I remember it because there was an older guy named Dr. New, Abraham New. His last name was New. He was Chinese, so it wasn't N-E-W, but it sounded like New.
Yep.
And his little joke was, "Dr. Abraham New, never old, always new."
That's amazing.
But that might be worthwhile to start again, so that everybody knows people's names.
Yeah.
And then your idea of asking the new people to identify themselves, so that everybody knows everybody, and so that they put faces to names if you want to ask questions or want to ask advice.
That might be good to implement, just because it'll make that camaraderie natural, or that word organic, because as we all know, there are certain factors of meeting people in certain areas of the country that are different. Coastlines might be a little more lackadaisy, be like, "Hey, what's your name? Cool, let's go grab a coffee." Middle of America might be like, "Who are you?
It's
What do you
funny how,
want
like,
from me?"
in our conversation today, as we drove to Indianapolis and came back, many times you've touched on that culture shock of you coming from the West Coast here to Middle America, and here I am in the middle of it, raised in Western Pennsylvania, living most of my life in Central Ohio.
Yeah.
It's like I must be a real product of that Midwest mindset, because you tell me it exists, so I believe you, but I've never experienced it because I've been right in the middle of it.
But I've never experienced it with you, and most people I know that have met you first time. I think it goes back to being a a thespian in a theatrical sense of just always being, this is me, I'm here.
You know what? I mentioned before how painfully shy I was, and I'll give you an example of how shy or quiet or reserved or whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
When I was in like junior, senior year of high school, I worked in a pet shop, an aquarium shop.
Oh, yeah.
And every once in a while, one of the owners would drive a van to a place outside of Akron, which was a wholesaler. This is where they got their dry stock, their equipment kind of things. And also, it was quite a place, if you can picture a warehouse full of tanks. And this is where they got their livestock.
Fish tanks, so we're clear.
Yes, fish tanks. Not armor. We're not talking about army tanks. Fish tanks, right. So, one of the owners would go about every other week, and I was asked, "Hey, do you want to ride with me when I go?" Sure. And literally, from Newcastle, Pennsylvania, driving over to Akron, come back, I maybe said 10 words.
Oh, wow. How old are you?
I would have been 16, 17. Just wasn't sure what to, how do you start a conversation? What do you talk about?
Right.
I just, do I have anything I have word to say? Probably not. So,
Right. I would say it's very influential as far as being in the culture of here, very much like, if I don't have anything to say, why would I waste my words, And that's, I consider that a very good tool now, being that I've been living in Columbus now for 3 years. I wouldn't say I am all-knowing of the Rust Belt lifestyle, because I'm not. But the introduction that I had to now, I will say I've had reverse culture shock from going back and visiting family in the Pacific Northwest. Because it's like, oh, you're actually talking to me and having a conversation, but I don't want to talk to you because I'm a little shy now too. I think it's just, you can take the horse to the water, but you can't make it drink.
You can't make it drink. No. So I guess I have come out of my shell, and being involved on stage probably has something to do with that. And then it's that mission that I didn't feel that the old dudes I met when I first came to the club were all that friendly or welcoming. And I think that when you meet somebody, you should, in a club situation like that, you should try and roll out the welcome mat.
Open arms and say like, hey, fist bump, boom, high five. I agree. I want to ask you about with college life. You had said that you did the bicentennial play. That was the first time you were anything theatric,
right,
or any production wise, if you will. What from that? How old were you when that happened?
That was 1976, so I was in 6th grade.
Okay, so 12, 11, 12?
Right, what are you?
Whatever age 6th grade is anymore, I can't remember. But within that time, you got 6th grade, that school era, to high school, then to college. What happened between that time? Were you doing more theatrical?
There wasn't a lot of theater, going on.
As you said, yeah.
At school, we didn't have a theater program. One thing that interesting happened, some people might remember the rise of the Muppets.
Yes.
The Jim Henson's Muppets were on Sesame Street, then they got their own TV show and they made a movie. So, puppetry was big.
Yeah.
And our school was going to have a puppetry club.
Oh.
And so I thought that was interesting, and it never really did anything, I think, because none of the students were really interested in writing a play or organizing shows.
Right.
But one of my real memory of that is that when I was part of this group that really didn't go anywhere, do anything much, but I was still a part of it, my mother tried to talk me out of being involved in this group because she said if any of my dad's friends found out, he would be embarrassed.
Interesting.
Now, I think that's, obviously that's code for her saying, I don't think this is an appropriate thing for you to be interested in.
Right.
And so, I was offended, but what can you do? Obviously, when I go to college...
When in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, when in Pennsylvania, do as Pennsylvania. I get to college.
And where did you go?
Wanted to be. I went to Youngstown State. Go Penguins! Obviously, people hear Youngstown State. They know that when I was there as a student, we had a football coach by the name of Tressel, and Tressel would, of course, come to even greater fame once he moved to Columbus, as I came to greater fame when I moved to Columbus. But that's another story for another day.
Okay.
I went to school to be involved in radio. I was going to be a journalist.
Right, as you said, yeah.
Auditioned for a play the end of my freshman year. Did 2 or 3 shows and said, "Hey, I want to change my major." And, my parents were not thrilled about that. What are you going to be? You're going to be an actor, I guess.
So that's where I'm trying to find the line here, the connection points. Like, what pushed you into wanting to do acting as a lifestyle for a choice of a career?
You know what? It's an overpowering ego and wanting people to look at you. I don't care what any actor says to you. Part of them wants the attention. Well, yeah, and I'm going to tell you, do some checking around. There are plenty of actors who are shy off stage, but can do the stuff in front of the camera on stage. And if anybody has a serious drug problem, you'll understand what it is to be in front of an auditorium full of a couple hundred people and have all of those people laugh when you want them to, or all of those people applaud when you get done with a scene or when you finish a song. That kind of approval, that kind of acceptance is really wonderful.
So you were doing more theatrical productions in college then, as far as getting into it, becoming a thespian? 2 or 3, 4 shows a year. That's a good amount.
And then once I got out, and moved to Columbus, doing a lot of semi-professional and other kinds of theater too, but a little community theater and a lot of, like, quote, here's those air quotes, real theater.
Right.
Getting paid to do it.
Oh, wow, that's nice. I have to feel good too. Be like, I feel like I did something well worth my time. So, you went to theater after your parents were like, "No, you shouldn't do that," but you're like, "Screw it, I'm going to do it." And you find yourself in Columbus. At what point did you find miniature trees?
Well, I was always interested in nature in general, but animals, plants. In through that, I had a garden. I had house plants even at a young age. So I liked plants. I also had an interest in Japanese history and Japanese culture. So those intersect with bonsai, and having the space in the room. Once I moved to Columbus, I came here because my girlfriend had got a job with Bank One, which doesn't exist anymore.
Okay.
But
did it turn into something? Or?
Yes, they've been absorbed by a couple different. I think they're now part of Chase.
Okay.
But I had space, and because prior to moving to Columbus, we lived in a little studio apartment, and so there was no room for anything except the two of us.
Right.
So I was reading, discovered you go to the library, and the first book I found was one of the Brooklyn Botanic Garden guides, which is still, they're still printed, still in print, still an excellent introduction to bonsai. Yeah. That was kind of what put it in my head. I'm going to do this.
Interesting. So you went from. So how old were you at the time? About 24. Graduated college. Yeah. Give or take, been out of college for like a year or two.
Yes.
So then you're doing the theater, semi-professional, getting paid to do some of the work, community theater, just enjoying life with your girlfriend at the time. Small apartment. You just wander into a library and you find the book?
No, I think I went hunting for the books. I don't remember exactly what pushed me to go and look, but once I found the books, it's like, this is something that's going to happen.
So in that way, had you seen like a little tree styled in a certain realm around you, or by someone you knew?
And now I'm trying to think of that. No, I never encountered bonsai in real life.
But
I'd heard about this. I'd heard about it. I think was aware of it. Hadn't seen it done. Saw the books when I was in that library, small town library. We moved to Columbus, and I forget how I heard about it. There was a class being presented at Burwell's Nursery, and some of the older members may remember. Burwell's is a business that hasn't been there in probably 25 years, but an old-fashioned nursery out on Main Street, and my girlfriend and I went. She did a juniper, and I did a myrtle, true myrtle, an excellent species for bonsai. Yeah. Neither one of them lived very long, so that was the start of it. There were little mames, could fit in your palm of your hand.
Nice.
So, doomed for failure.
Right.
I still have those pots.
Oh, those are amazing.
I still have those 2 pots.
Wish you had the tree, though.
Well, it'd be nice to have those trees, but, I'm always curious. Well, I always talk to somebody who does bonsai. You still have your first tree, and it's about half and half. Some people have managed to keep that tree alive.
I have 2 of them out of the 3 or 4 I had. One got fried in hot Oregon summer, and the other one didn't water enough because I didn't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm here with over 20 or more. How many trees do you have at home?
I haven't counted lately.
Wife says too many?
No, she doesn't. No, she doesn't really say anything. Like I said,
right.
She's an indoor homebody kind of person. She
Right.
rarely goes out in the backyard, and she has never really walked around
Okay.
the bonsai area. And except when I'm out of town, the rare times I'm out of town, she'll water.
Nice.
But she never says you have too many. She says you have a lot. It took me forever to water.
Yeah.
But maybe 40-ish.
Okay.
40-ish tree, what I would call finished bonsai or recognizable bonsai. Then I probably have that many cuttings and seedlings and that kind of junk.
Understood.
That might become bonsai at some point.
Nice. Or giveaways for other people to start on.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me see if I got this correct. So you go to college with the idea of journalism and radio, which is still an awesome detail of a job in the sense of just being in the public sphere without knowing who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Then you choose to go not full 180, but definitely a side tangent to theatrical, major in production and other things, right?
Right.
Then you're in a small apartment. Find this tree that you work on through what nursery was it called?
Burwell's.
Okay. Within that, you got the bug rather quick, or it took you a while to really want to...
I got the bug quick. I didn't go, like a whole backyard right away, but I set up 2 little benches, bonsai benches, and maybe had 10 or 15 trees at the beginning. Fairly built up to 15 trees fairly quick.
Cool. Do you have a favorite species you like to work with?
I'm really bad at picking a one.
Or top 3, or
top 4. What's your favorite movie? What's your favorite ice cream? I have a hard time picking, but I enjoy elms. I like crab apples. I love portulacaria. I have a lot of erodiums, which aren't real bonsai but are fun.
Right.
I don't have any. I don't have any species that I say I hate. I'd never work with again.
Let me ask you this: how do you approach people that don't know anything about bonsai and get them into knowing something about bonsai? How would you approach someone? Say you met John Smith on the street, knew of bonsai because
well,
he
here
I
will tell you. Well, yeah, I will tell you one thing. My philosophy of how to talk to people, out in the world, and some of it is based on professional experience I had. I worked for about 11 years for the Ohio Historical Society.
Oh, sounds nice.
So it was the best job ever. For somebody like me, an actor who's with an interest in history and social studies, it was like the greatest thing. I worked at the Ohio State House in the office that dealt with the tours and the educational programs and things like that. So I quickly got to see that the best way to approach people is to answer questions if they have them, but you never tackle somebody and say, hey, let me tell you everything there is to know about Greek Revival architecture. And that has really drifted over into the way I think that the Bonsai Club and bonsai presentations and outreach in general should work. Because I've been to events where I've seen other members who are not content to just sit there and relax and smile at people who walk by and be a welcoming presence. They feel they have to go out and tackle people and grab them by the shirt sleeve and say, hey, did you ever do this? Or do you want to know? And it's like, calm down. All right.
What's your favorite species right now?
Right. Well, I love the line in the original Ghostbusters movie. Bill Murray's character is in a restaurant. He's out on a date with Sigourney Weaver's character. They're doing date stuff, and then Dan Aykroyd runs in with this. Oh, hey, you got this is happening, and Bill Murray says, "Hey, you're scaring the straights." And I just love that. It's like, hey, the civilians. We have to work at the civilians' speed. We have to go on their interest level, because you're out like we had an excellent outreach event last September when the club had a booth at the Upper Arlington Arts Festival, and people were coming by, and there again, my philosophy is to be welcoming, smiling, but you don't have to jump the table and say, hey, let me tell you about these little trees.
Right.
You certainly, hey, these are bonsai. Did you ever do bonsai before? Do you ever think about bonsai? No. That person has never thought about bonsai until they walked right past here.
Right. Giving them that opportunity to see it, and then acknowledging, like, oh wait, I have seen this, whether it be Karate Kid or the new Cobra Kai or a Wes Anderson film. He always seems to input those.
I haven't noticed that. I'll have to look for that.
Or Tenenbaums.
The new Dune movie.
The new Dune movie
has a lot of bonsai in it.
Have you ever heard of the anime called Cowboy Bebop?
I have heard of Cowboy Bebop.
So the new live action has a lot of bonsai trees in it where he's actually working on them.
Oh, really? Working on them?
Quite cool.
I'll have to check that out.
It's interesting. So with your implementation of starting your ceramics that you make for yourself or to sell, what initiated you to actually start a semi-business, if I can say that? It's not semi-business. It is a business. You make money, but it's not your full
no,
career.
it's
but
right.
Like, what even got your foot in the door to be like, I think I want to sell these for money and make it an official thing? My first thought was, how can I sort of just defray my expenses? It wasn't about making a profit. It's just like, you want to break even.
It'd be cool to break even, because you do the pots, you end up with inventory,
right? And
there's even with all the trees I have, there's only so many pots that I can put trees in at one time. And even with all the pots I have, between the ones I've made and the ones that are other people's pots that I've gotten from various places, it always seems like, I don't have just the right tree for that.
Right. And
then I have trees that are like, well, not that I have is exactly right for that. So, yeah, it's just trying to thin out the herd a little bit. And I give things to people, especially when I was just starting. I felt real awkward about saying, how much should an item cost, or is it worth even paying for? So passing things out was a way to get rid of stuff. And now I still am not sure. It amazes me when people are willing to pay money for things.
Right. As they feel like it's worth it. And
I'm awkward with, like, what should this cost?
You got to put on your theater face.
Well, we mentioned we were just spent some time at Mark Field's place over in Indianapolis, and he's
Wonderful
got
spot.
a nice selection of pots, some from Japan, some from really good American makers, and
European, all the above. Yeah.
and you see the price on some of these, and it's like, wow.
Yeah.
Am I? It's the imposter syndrome creeps in again. It's like, is this like me? Could I be this? I don't know that I could do this.
So do you think for you, I guess this goes with anything. I always tell people with bonsai, like, well, how much time does it take? I'm like, it takes as much time as you want to put into it. If you want to get really good at it, you're going to put a lot of time into it.
And that is, I've made the comparison that bonsai, to be successful at it, there are many variables that you need to take into account so that you can keep a tree alive and style it correctly. And clay is a lot like that. There's much more to it than people realize, as far as working with clay, getting it glazed and fired and usable as a teacup or a bonsai pot. So both these things I've gotten myself into are a lot of iffy variables to deal with, and both of them are, you can see things that are quite expensive, and it's easy to say, well, why is it so expensive? And then when you think about it, you're paying for somebody's time and experience.
Right.
That you understand.
Right, because you're paying for what they have to give rather than what you think is right, So the implementation of your business, just to break even, but also see how maybe you fared out in the world of trees and ceramics. Is that safe to say that you want to see as like a competition with yourself, maybe? As like, can I do better than I think I can do? And keep pushing myself to be
I don't know
better.
that I had exactly that thought, but now that you say it, it makes sense after the fact.
Right.
Yeah, it's like, am I able to do this? Can I make this happen?
As far as with workshops, we discussed, we're both getting into more workshops. I've been taking more than a few in the last couple of years. I've been in Columbus just due to the ability to drive to so many states in less time than it would be on the West Coast.
Right.
And having that existence of the old history started here on the West Coast with, Yuji Yoshimura, and you got Nature's Way up in Pennsylvania. You got Chase Rosade in New Hope. So there's a lot of history right in that little pocket. You go down to Kentucky, you got people down there. In the South, you got Weigerts, everything else. Within the realm of workshops, if there was a workshop specifically for bonsai ceramics, would you
In a heartbeat. Oh, yeah. And it's funny how, like, there's a little bit of, it's hard to find out bonsai ceramic specific stuff. There's a big clay community. Obviously, it's an enormously popular hobby, and a lot of people doing it semi-professionally and professionally.
Would you say it's more focused for like pottery wares, like housewares, and cups, tea, all that?
They call it, there's functional wear, which you can
Right.
use, and then decorative wear, and
Right.
there's lots of people doing all of that. But to find out the specifics of dealing with bonsai pottery, it's a little bit like the old guild system where you have to figure it out yourself a little bit.
Trial and error.
Trial and error, and yeah, if there was an apprenticeship, I'd really like that.
I know I've talked to some people that have done studies in Japan with certain potters that are allowing it. Like, you go there for like a week and you pay and you just do full-time ceramics the Japanese aesthetic way, or learn certain techniques that will propel you forward. I know, as we've talked before in the past about, you've always wanted to visit Japan and other things. If that opportunity came up, would you
I'd
be on the next train to Clarksville?
Next train to Clarksville. Yeah, next plane to
Japan land.
Osaka.
Yeah.
Osaka.
That's, I have a feeling that might happen. I don't know. What are your prospects? I mean, you are, I think you know more potters than I do. I know more than a few bonsai artists. I talk to them. I don't know the potters specifically as you might, because you have the forums, but you also have the focus now, do you hear anything or do you find anything that these people are saying that they may be hosting classes for workshops or anything of the sort?
I haven't, and I think that because there's the bonsai market is it's much bigger than it used to be, but it's not enormous.
Right.
So between not being, I don't know that any bonsai potter is a big operation where they could have somebody, or American potters per se. I don't think there's any that could have somebody rotating cast of interns come in,
or even just like a weekend workshop, just a hot topic points of this is what this is. Certain definitions, like you said, grog, being the somewhat of you have the smooth mixed with the not smooth, and in that, but also teaching certain techniques that can help someone get farther faster, and then maybe having this workshop class where it's like a seasonal class for ceramics. You know what I mean? This season we're going to focus on this style of pottery or this style of clay making or something. That's a thing. Would you ever be interested in like putting that into some potter that American potter, ceramicist?
Putting that into their head?
Yeah, like they're
sure.
like, hey, what do you think of this?
What do you think of this?
Because that could do a lot. There's a lot of unexplored territory there. Because I've talked to a lot of people now that are getting into bonsai, have been in it for a while, and that have tried to make pots. Like you said, it's been that searching and finding and not coming up with much because it's not there. There's not really a lot of books about it. It's one of those things that's still, I would say, in the ether, if I could say that. I'm not a ceramicist myself. I would love to do ceramics, but I have so many other things that I love to do. I don't have more time to devote. But yourself, you have the small business that you own, things that way. Do you think, as you've been doing it for a while now, as you said, more people would be interested in, if they had the opportunity, definitively say yes, they would do it right away, or you don't know for sure?
I can't say for certain. To organize that kind of stuff, there's a lot to organizing that, and if you think of what a small business is, just to keep your business running and be able to produce pottery for yourself on your own, worry about your marketing and your connections and your production.
Right.
So many of these outfits are one-man bands, one-person bands. The extra time and effort of coordinating interns, apprentices, and trying to keep your own output going while you're trying to supervise and teach an apprentice, it'd be tough.
So do you think more than, what was I trying to say? Do you think that it would be more of like a club setting then, where you could have the ceramicist possibly come in and then not find cheap clay, but affordable clay for, say, 10 participants in a ceramics class that you could give the basics and then go to a community kiln and fire, and then they have their pots? Would that be something to consider?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the club has done that on 2 different occasions that I know of in the past. Or maybe 3. I know Dale Catroy came 2 different times, I think.
May rest in peace, right?
And, quite a talented ceramic guy.
Yeah, because he was. So how many ceramicists for bonsai, including yourself, are in Ohio now? Because you have April, you have you.
Well, I did. You know what? Here's
Georgie, right?
Georgie up towards Cleveland. Chuck Eicher down towards Cincinnati. Sean Bocchino is in Cincinnati area. Tom Holcomb here in Columbus, but he's not actively producing right now.
Right.
There are probably a lot more, and it's you do me a real. I think you insult April and all those other folks to put me in that category. I don't know that I'm at April's level.
I mean, in regards to, I see what you're saying as far as being a person that, as you said, you're imposter syndrome possibly, in that way. But in regards to, you're still trying, and you're helping spread the awareness of ceramics in Ohio, based in Ohio, and, whether you want to be at this level someday with other people, that idea of like, do I want to get there? Do I just want to stay where I'm at? I would think you'd want to be better as far as, just learning every day. And you're very humble in regards to, doing that. But I would totally put you in that because you're also helping the market get better because people are just learning more as you learn more.
I think you're giving me a little more credit than I deserve, but thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
As anybody who took, my personal opinion is anybody who puts time into something that's a hobby that becomes a lifestyle and wants to see it get better, I don't think it relates to, they do this pot better because mine's different. I think it's, are you still having fun with what you're doing? And if you are, people are picking up on that. Like skateboarding. So many kids nowadays, I'm sure, get super involved. Like, I want to get sponsored, become pro, and then get a lot of money. But they stop having fun and they don't want to do it anymore.
Right.
That's where it falls. Just like bonsai, just like anything else. If you just go with the mindset, I'm going to do this because I can make this, then you're not really doing it to do it anymore. You're doing it for something that's not anything in the essence of why you started. And I would like to see you get better at ceramics. I will definitely be buying some pottery sooner than later because you're making some Kusumono and accent pots soon, right?
Yeah, they're ready to go. Well, some of them are bisque. They need to get fired, glazed and fired. So my intention is to have stuff available at the January meeting.
Oh, joy!
One of our topics in that meeting is selection and bonsai pottery and selection and use of bonsai pottery. So I think that April Grigsby's going to be there.
Good.
And I'm going to be there.
With you said you were going to be glazing the new smaller pots that you're using for Kusumono or accent pieces. Do you have a specific glaze you'll be using or anything that you want to try out?
I do glazing and get stuff fired at a community studio called Buckeye Ceramics. They are connected to a big-time glaze manufacturer called Mako Colors. So they have the complete line of Mako products in that studio. So there's lots of things to try all the time. The cool thing is that these recipes for glazes are mixed up, and they're a color, a pattern, a texture. But if you mix them together, you get other effects. Things bleed together, or the chemicals in each one react in different ways, and you get colors you may not expect. There are so many variables as to the color, the way the chemicals react, what clay they're on, what temperature they get to, how long they stay at that temperature. So it's never the same exact function twice. It's never the same thing twice. But I don't find it a limitation to be using commercial premixed glazes rather than mixing my own.
Right.
I'm really happy with the selections I have.
And it comes with accessibility too, right? Mm-hmm. Not everyone has the time to go the full chemist outlet.
No, and it truly is. It's a lot. It's some physics and a lot of chemistry, and there are so many variables about how it works out.
Right.
And so, using pre-mixed glazes, commercially available glazes, somebody's done all that hard work for you.
Right. And you can possibly bounce off of that someday if you'd like to, right? Being like, what if I add this to this glaze, or is that an opportunity to take as well?
It is.
That's really cool. Well, Mark, I thank you for talking. It's we've been about it in an hour, and we're actually recording this time, which is good.
Well, I was going to check if we're actually.
If people are more interested to find more of your work or more about you, whereabouts can they look? Or
I have an Instagram, and I also have a page on Facebook. So Ancient Art Bonsai should be easy to find.
Okay. Well, thanks, man, and hope you had a good workshop. I know I did, and
it was.
Well, I'll talk to you again sometime.
I hope so.
All right.
Today's episode has been recorded, produced, and edited by Kevin Faris and Ryan Houston. Our music was provided by MIDI Cancer. To find more music from MIDI Cancer, check out their SoundCloud and Bandcamp pages. To find more information on the podcast, please check out our Instagram page, Bonsai Time Podcast, and our website, bonsaitimepodcast.com. To stay in touch with us, Kevin's Instagram is Kevin_Faris, PNW, and Ryan's website is right2tree2.com. You can find these links in the description below. Thank you for listening, and bonsai on!